I'm here to, token hype man style, inject some actual hope, and in the style of No Future, No Utopia Now, I'm not going to talk about the future first, I'm going to talk about the past. Because 100 years ago-ish, slightly over 100 years ago, when revolutionaries in Russia stormed the Winter Palace, they found miles upon miles upon miles of wine cellars, stocked with champagne and rum and brandy, and of course the first thing they did was have a massive piss-up. So this is what gets glossed over, right? But one of the key revolutionary moments in the history of capitalism is essentially a big public party. And radical writers at the time described this as almost like a biblical scene, like the streets are literally flowing with wine, flowing with this excess of riches that they've been denied for so long. And the more elitist observers obviously describe it with this sense of smugness, like this is simply confirmation of what they'd always thought, that this revolutionary feeling is no more or less than just the outpouring of this like rabid, libidinal mass that like needs to be contained. Like that was the confirmation that really the Tsarists want something after all. They talk about like this hunger, this outpouring of hunger for the sweetness of life as like somehow proof of the nonsense of the revolutionary impulse rather than precisely its nature. And they called it hedonistic. But hedonism in its simplest definition is just attention to the inherent value of like human happiness and human flourishing, which is unanchored from the niceties of bourgeois moralism. So like of course they would be suspicious. Like, yeah. And that kind of attitude would kind of, in its obverse, imply that the suffering of ordinary people is intolerable. So I love this moment, right? And I think about it like maybe on a daily basis, partly because it is the excuse to like gloss this kind of thing as like preparing myself for the inevitable raiding of the Tsarist wine cellars. But also because it says that the utopian impulse isn't just this like abstracted moment where humanity suddenly like morally purifies itself. It's jubilant and it's raucous and it's based on this already existing hunger, this already existing yearning that's finally allowed to take shape. And the utopian impulse seems to direct itself towards a lacuna, like, or an absence. It's this continual longing, it's this continual searching, and it's easy for that to feel tragic, right? Because you're always directing yourself to something that doesn't exist. But attention to that absence is precisely the first moment of politics that gets anything fucking done. Like, it's this primary moment of dissatisfaction which looks around the world where the majority of humanity live in conditions of absolute dispossession and starvation and immiseration and oppression and says, fuck this, it doesn't have to be this way. That's what the utopian impulse is. And this absence is a way of giving language to that kind of hope and that kind of anger, and that kind of language is something, you know, without which we're totally fucked from the get-go. We need utopia for the same reason that the solar system needs a black hole at its center. Like, you can't touch it, and you can't see it, and you definitely shouldn't go near it, but it's the thing that keeps everything in motion and holds all of our political ambitions in place. So when we ignore Marx for a little bit, sorry, happy birthday, and do the hard work of imagining the world otherwise, we need to look elsewhere, right? And that kind of says a lot, because the right can look backwards to this sort of fictionalized past, this like halcyon glory days where, I don't know, like before like black people got the vote, or before it was like nominally illegal to kill gay people, like, oh, weren't those the days? But like, it has to look backwards, because it can't look forwards. When it looks forwards, honestly, it has no future. It has no promises for us. Its future is one of, and to is one of total like global decimation. That's the future that we're facing. And it can't look to the present either, because then it has to admit something it doesn't really want to admit, which is that the situation in which we're living in now is totally tolerable to them. They don't care about immiseration, they don't care about the real consequences, because they are living in something as close to utopia as they're going to get. We're living in utopia at the moment, it's just not ours. So we're at a crossroads here, right? Every generation kind of feels that, and it's like, that's kind of like what it is to live in history, and that's, you know, you're just forced to the precipice of something, but like I think this time I really mean it, as many people before me have touched on, like, we are very much at a crux. This moment of political, technological, ecological change is where futures divide. And one is of, I'm going to get this right, first off, I'm going to warm up. Fully automated, luxury, gay, green, space communism with full reparations and the abolition of gender. And it's possible. Like, we have the equipment already. There's already champagne under the streets of the Winter Palace. We just haven't got the fucking key yet, right? But we can. But there is another. There is another one, and it is of mass technological dispossession, climate chaos, brutally racist policing, and systematic gendered violence to keep it in place. Yes, thank you for that. The art of the understatement. So we're living in their utopia, which is like good news and bad news. On the negative side, we have no future in this world. We have no chance at liberation and happiness. Our happiness is of vanishingly small importance to the architects of this reality. They are killing the earth, which amounts to no more or less than mass genocide, and that's alongside the mass genocide that they're already doing. On the plus side, we have no future. So that means that we can't be bought off with all these promises of like maybe our children's children will have a life that is of some value, will have a life that is somehow worth meaning. Like, the only demand that makes sense in those conditions is utopia right fucking now. Yeah! And I am, like, I'm hopeful, I really am. I'm kind of hopeful by nature, anyway, so it's just like nice that like everyone here has like swooped in to confirm that reality, like within the last 2 years, so thanks guys, I feel less mad than I usually do. Because something is really changing in this country, we do need to be realistic, as Dahlia said, about the forces that will mass against any kind of attempt to curtail this totally unrestrained force of capitalism. But here's the thing, we already know that they're afraid of us, and they should be, because we are dangerous, and all we need to do is stay that way. No future, Utopia Now.